Good day, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning, depending upon what time you see this.
Yes,
Welcome to
greetings.
Earth School.
Yes,
Yoni,
welcome everyone.
how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing good. I can't complain. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. It's cold, I can tell you that. Definitely cold. I just want to say welcome to everybody. Welcome back. It is cold. And so we are actually going to take this as an opportunity to kind of change up the way that we do things, the way that we record. Now, normally we live stream and we're here live while everyone is commenting and all of that. And we were having issues with that because we wanted to interact with everybody in the comments. So we were thinking of ways to make it easier for us to interact. And then the cold hit, and I you guys know I record in my greenhouse. It's really cold out here. So we decided to record earlier in the day when it's warm out here. And that kind of solves our problem with being in the comments. So we are not live in the moment, but we will be live in the comments. So we're asking everybody who normally joins us live to meet us in the comments. Let's have a conversation as the episode is going. So that's a big announcement. We just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that we are not, live streaming anymore, but we are going to have a live premiere and then we'll be in the comments between 6 and 7 interacting with you, talking to you, getting to know you, taking suggestions and comments and listening to what you have to say and making this more of a community. So now that the business is out of the way, oh, yes. Our topic this month is unconditional love. And this episode, we are exploring unconditional love. And we do have some questions to guide us, but we're going to kind of go where it goes. But before we get started with that, um, Uni, do you have anything you want to kind of say before we get into the questions and things that we have for today's conversation?
No, just thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us.
All right. And so we had a really great episode last time, homeroom check in, and we kind of started touching on some of these topics. And we took some of the things that were developing and we started really talking about what is unconditional love. And I think both of us kind of felt, and correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of felt like we didn't really understand the extent of what unconditional love really is. Um, and then the kind of question that comes after that, and why I would like to talk about them together is there a difference between like spiritual unconditional love, so like the unconditional love of God, and unconditional love in human relationships, and if it's even possible for a human to have unconditional love. So Uni, I'm gonna put you on the spot first.
Okay. I want to tackle the part about, God's unconditional love for us. I feel like, although we know that, we are one with God and God is one with us, being in these human bodies, these human kind of like containers, these human vessels, I feel like it does limit us in a way. You know what I mean? So we have to strive to get to that point. You know what I mean? Like the whole point is to strive for that oneness, to strive back to understanding unconditional love. But I think that it's a really big challenge because in order to love someone unconditionally, you have to be kind of like uncompromising in, your values and uncompromising in the care that you give yourself and others. You know what I mean? You have like unconditional love is, it's me loving you as I love myself, and it means that I won't compromise my integrity. I won't, I don't love out of fear. I don't, shrink myself or shrink you out of any fear or anything like that. It is, really treating people how we want to be treated, in my opinion. And I think that, when you come into this world, and, we've talked about how, um, with the program, there's this, we all have trials and tribulations and things that we have to
Right.
go through, right? So it makes it challenging for us to be so free with, you know what I mean, like loving ourselves and loving others. And so I think that it is, I want to say it's humanly impossible to love like God loves. Like, I've seen some very spiritual, very loving people, and even they have, you can see, you know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
it's it's a challenge, to love the way God loves. And I don't want to. I kind of think it's kind of humanly impossible to love the way, because if we love the way God loves, then in a lot of ways, like, would that mean that our mission here is up? You know what I mean? Like, like, have we reached that level where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you've done all you came here to do. You've plateaued. You've slayed all the devils, all the King Koopas, and all of that, and now you can, you know what I mean? Now it's time to go to the next level.
Yeah.
So I really don't know if it's possible. In my opinion, I just I don't think so. Like, I really don't think that it's possible to love the way God loves, because I feel like there's too many valleys and dips and things that we go through. I think we can get close. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? I think there's an ability to get really close, but as far as like really reaching that plateau, I think that once you get there, it's like you're back with oneness, and you're back with God. And I feel like maybe that could be a precursor for going to the next level. I don't know. That's just my thoughts. What about you? What you think, Omi?
Yeah, I hear everything that you're saying. I I don't know that I agree that it's humanly impossible necessarily.
Hmm.
I just don't think it's possible in the current state of the world.
Ooh, that's a
Like
good point.
humanity's state right now, where it is, the race consciousness of humanity, I don't know that we can, because there's still so much fear, there's still so much lack, there's still so much of that, that it's constantly playing out in people's lives. And so that I don't know that we're able to do that on a level of humanity. You know what I mean? Maybe as we all evolve, that's something that will emerge. I do believe that at certain point it's going to emerge. I hear what you're saying about maybe then the game is done, but I mean, we also don't know that. It's possible. What else is that? What is left after that? But also maybe there's other things to, to learn after that that we can't even imagine. So I like to be open about it, but I really do feel like I kind of agree with you on that. Like right now in humanity, the way things are, I don't know how possible it is to get as close to unconditional love as God's unconditional love, because God loves us no matter what we do, who we kill, how many wars we start, and in a human sense, it's hard to love someone like that because lack, because, hurt, fear, losing a loved one, loving someone who has hurt you in a deep way. I feel like unconditional love is only possible if you cannot be hurt, right? If you can't be hurt, that's why I feel like, oh yeah, it's easy for God to love us. We can't hurt it. We can't hurt God. You can't do anything to offend God. You can't do anything to hurt God's feelings. You can't do anything. And if you don't want to be bothered with God, God just says, okay, go on about your business until you're ready to be involved with me. And then I'm still going to love you, but I'm gonna love you over here while and wait, and I'm still watching and I'm still protecting and I'm still doing those things, but I'm not gonna do anything big until you ask me for help, right? Until you ask me to come into your life, because God isn't pushy. We have free will, and so I don't know that like a human is capable of that same kind of love because we still hurt, we still feel these emotions, when someone harms us. So how, I mean, I don't want to jump too far ahead because we got a lot of like little questions. So I don't want to jump too far ahead in some of the things that I'm saying. But yeah, I'm kind of with you on like, I don't know that we can do it right now. That's the only
Yeah,
caveat I would say to what you said is I don't know. Maybe at some point we can. And that's a maybe too.
right,
Yeah.
right. I do think I just want to say that even though I think God loves us unconditionally, I do think that some of the things that we do hurts God. Like I think that some of the hurt that people like we cause each other and the destruction that we do to God's children, to ourselves as God's children, I think that it does hurt God. You know what I mean? I feel like I do think that God does not want to see us doing harm to each other. So, yeah, I just have to disagree on that point
Yeah.
because I think that, even though God loves us unconditionally, I think that God in my spirit, I'm hearing God weeps at the destruction. You know what I mean? God weeps at the hurt and the pain that we cause each other. Yes, God loves us unconditionally, but I think that even though it may hurt God to see what we're doing to each other down here, God still loves us even through that. And I think
Hmm.
that it's hard for us to love each other even though we hurt each other. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
So that's the part that I think that I just wanted to speak on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing that I kind of have on this list is it's about, I guess we didn't really answer what we think unconditional love is either. And maybe we can get into that, or maybe as we have this conversation that's what's developing, because it's really a hard thing to narrow down, right?
It is.
So the next question is about unconditional love starting with the self. um, and this came about because it's like as we were saying, like it's very hard to love someone else if you don't love you, because then you're seeking for them to fulfill something in you that you should be doing for yourself. And as it is beautiful to experience the love of another person, you really have to be grounded in your love of self so that the things that that person does to you that maybe they do unconsciously, because a lot of relationship dynamics, they're unconscious, subconscious, they are triggers, they are things people are not aware of, that's all of that. And they may not intentionally hurt you. Sometimes they do. Sometimes people do, and even that intentional hurt, there's a subconscious like reason behind that, right? But in order to be able to withstand that hurt, you have to love yourself. You have to love yourself enough to know when to say enough is enough, because sometimes it does get to that point. Sometimes that person just needs to go on that journey, and their purpose in your life was for you to stand in your self-love, right? Which is something I didn't learn till my 40s. Definitely went around in my 20s thinking, why are they doing this to me? It's something wrong with me. I need to fix me, and letting other people dictate how I felt about myself. Um, Not to say I'm completely cured of that. I don't want anybody to think that,
Right.
because I do. I have my moments. Honestly, I've realized a lot this week how much I allow what other people say about me to control how I think about me.
Mm.
And that's what makes this question so deep, because I was really realizing it this week that I question my own motives because other people question my motives. They question my
Mm.
motives. Yeah, like why, they I realized, that people will think some negative motivation but behind me doing something, and then even though that doing that, whatever that is in my best interest, I'll start to question whether or not I should be doing that. And am I doing it because I want to be mean, or am I doing it just to out of a place of fear, or am I doing it because this is what needs to be done? And I caught myself having that conversation with myself like 3 or 4 times in the week. At
Wow.
which point I was like, I am not secure in my self love,
Mm.
because then I wouldn't be movable on this point, right? And does that mean that I don't love the other person who's affected by what I'm doing? No, you know. And a lot of the incidences that I'm thinking of are things with my kids, because God knows that's my biggest teacher right now because I still have little guys at home, right?
Mhm.
And not so little guys. But a lot of my motivations behind why I have certain things in place, I do things a certain way, get questioned, because that's what kids do. You just want to control me. I don't think that's it. I think I just want my house clean, but that's
Right.
you know. Um, but I am realizing that it's easier to not be moved in that when I'm secure in what my intention. I'm secure in you know my care of myself, so that I am well fed, well hydrated, well rested, that my immune system and that my nervous system are all functioning properly, so that when I am challenged, I am able to, you know, respond and not react in an unloving way. Um, yeah. So making sure that I have unconditionally loved myself first is setting me up to be able to love others. So it does start with the self first. As and that's my perspective. What do you have to say about this idea of self love, unconditional self love?
Yeah, I agree with you. I've been actually doing some work myself around, just being really rooted within myself. And although it's not necessarily to do with my intentions, like I usually don't get really moved on my intentions too much. Like if someone accuses me, I'm just like, no, that's not true. Like I don't even like I like I'll check myself and I'm like, no, that's not true. Like I don't have that thought process. Like where'd you even come up with that? And as I've gotten older, I've learned that a lot of it is projections and
Right.
people, you know what I mean, like saying things because those are the thoughts that they have in their head. Those are their motivations. Those aren't my motivations. So I definitely I haven't had that when it comes to like my intentions and motivations. Like I don't allow myself to be projected on with that. But I will say that when it comes to compromising or kind of like I want to say like kind of like maybe not having so many boundaries, like kind of getting swayed. That's where I've been working, like just being more rooted within
Yeah.
myself and more secure within myself. You know, growing up, a lot of times I just be like, sure, like I'll roll with you. Like like I was the friend that like, yeah, I'm kind of like down for whatever, but not really whatever. Like I have my limits, of course.
Right.
I have my limits, you know what I mean? But kind of just like I roll with the punches. Like you want to go here, let's go. You want to go there, let's go. But if there's certain things that no, I'm not down with that. You know what I mean? But I feel like when it came to my boundaries, like not speaking up for myself because, and I remember we spoke about this, I think last month. You know, what is the thing that is kind of like that I felt, you know, was almost dangerous for me to admit? And that's that it's okay for me to speak up for myself. You know what I mean? Like when people would say certain things and do certain things, I was kind of conditioned to just kind of like sit there and take it, even though I didn't like it. And, you know, especially depending on the environment that I was in. If I'm at work, you know, maybe I have, you know, so-called managers and, you know, so-called leaders who would say certain things and I, you know, I tell them, you know, certain things made me uncomfortable and they would continue to cross my boundaries. And now I think that, you know, in order to keep this job, I just kind of gotta sit there and deal with it because you know, I've been to HR before. I've put the paperwork. You know what I mean? I've done these things. It don't get you nowhere. So you grin and bear it to keep your job because you know you got bills. You know you got a child at home. You know you got things that you're trying to do, and it's like you know feeling like anywhere I go, it's kind of the same thing. You know what I mean? It's like oh, any job I go to, I'm still a black woman. I'm still you know, I'm still looked at with all of these, you know, stereotypes and I'm dealing with the same thing wherever I go. So I'm just gonna sit here and bear it. My boundaries are being crossed. I hate this. I don't feel happy here, but I still show up. I put a smile on my face. I make everyone else comfortable while I'm uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I've even done that in certain family environments, you know, even with certain friends. I'm like, you know, I think I've, you know, shared this before, you know, just people just saying things that I feel we shouldn't speak to each other in a certain way. Like
Right.
there's like, I don't feel that, you know, someone that I love and care for should say the same things to me that someone that I know doesn't love and care for me. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like that, like
Mm-hmm.
the same thing shouldn't be coming out of your mouth if you love and care for me. You sound like an enemy to me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but sometimes I would grin and bear it. I would deal with it. You know what I mean? And I feel like I've gotten to that point where I'm not grinning and bearing and dealing with anything anymore. If it makes me uncomfortable, if I don't like it, if I don't want to, you know, be around it, if I feel like it's not, you know, conducive to my emotional health and well-being, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to sit there and take it. And so that's where I've been getting and kind of getting out of that, like, oh, I have to be a victim. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to be a victim. Like, I can stand up for myself. I can speak up for myself. And in order to do that, I have had to get more rooted within myself and have more unconditional love and compassion for myself. You know, I feel like I was disconnected from my feelings because I would feel like, again, just like, oh, you know, oh, that's just how they are. You know, this person just speaks aggressively. That's just how they are. But guess this is how I am. I don't like that. It makes me uncomfortable, you know? So yeah, that's kind of how I've had to like get clear within myself, like really learn to like really set boundaries and really get rooted within myself so that I'm not so easily um really swayed on the inside while looking stoic or like unfazed on the outside. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to your experience, to both of our experiences. As far as like just accepting what other people say, do, feel, and feeling as though we need to change ourselves. And that's not unconditionally loving yourself. That's not, you know, um, and again, what makes it hard is what you were saying, you know, about this world we live in, and as you're learning to manifest and you're learning to do all of these things, great. I'm hoping and believing that there is a place where we're going to get to where we're going to be able to pull in the resources we need without having to be subjected to some of these things. But in the stage where we are now, in the stage of our consciousness development as we are now, lack exists. We know that lack doesn't exist in a spiritual sense, but lack exists in this physical world until you learn a certain level of how to call things in, which, if I'm being 100% honest, I'm not heretofore. Maybe tomorrow I will be, maybe later this afternoon. I'm not holding anything off, but I'm speaking of experience thus far. I have not been able to just randomly pull in millions of dollars to support myself. So sometimes you just grin and bear it because you're like, I need this job, you know? Or if you're a housewife who is at home with, someone who works outside the home and provides you may deal with that bad relationship because you need to be supported, and here we are again with, we can be hurt, we can have lack, there's safety, there's, shelter, all of these things come into this ability to love the self enough to not deal with somebody else's crap, right? And to be able to unconditionally love them, but not have to subject yourself to any harm in any kind of way. So I really appreciate you sharing, kind of that struggle that you've had, um, because I think it's going to help a lot of people. You know.
Thank you.
Which kind of brings us to the next question, which is, how do you unconditionally love in this physical world? And how can we be unconditional love in this physical world? So,
I think it starts with um I want to, like, two words are coming up for me, right? Grace, patience. You know what I mean? Patient enough to understand that, everything is not going to be perfect. No one is perfect. I'm not perfect. And I don't want to sit up here and act like I don't, offend people or do things. You know what I mean? Sometimes just my very presence can offend people, and I don't know why. I don't know where it came from. I don't know. You know what I mean? It could be something that, people see in me that I don't realize. And so it takes a level of, you know, patience and grace. Like I kind of feel like it really starts there with ourselves first, and just really understanding that we're all human, we all have flaws, we all have, things that are going on, and being really careful and compassionate. Like I can't get away from the word care. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
Being careful, careful with ourselves, careful with each other. I feel like it's just so important. We live in a world that is like so aggressive. Like I'm thinking of Ludacris talking about throw them bows, like somebody ain't your way, throw them bows. Like, you know what I mean? Like we live in such an aggressive world. People will steamroll over you to get to their goals and their agenda. But what we have to realize is that, first of all, like you said, it starts with us, number one, right? It starts with us. Unconditional love starts with ourselves. And when we give ourselves that grace and when we're patient with ourselves, it'll help us be graceful and patient with other people as well, while still holding our boundaries in place, while staying aligned with our integrity, and while still holding true to our values. You know what I mean? And, you know, I feel like there's just certain things in the world that we all should kind of like agree on, and we're not there yet. So for me it's like you exactly right. So hurting children, that should be a no-brainer. You know what I mean? Abuse of any kind, a no-brainer. Like certain abuses are very, oh, like it's just, this is clearly abuse. You know what I mean? But you have some people who don't think that way for whatever reason. They don't see the innocence of a child, so how can they see the innocence of
right.
an adult, a grown person? You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
or a grown adult. And so, stealing from others. Like I just feel like there's certain things that should just be just no brainers when it comes to values and things like that. The fact that we have to pay for food is, and I'm probably like going off on a tangent here, but the fact that
Let's
we
do
have to
it.
pay, the fact that we have to pay for food is like that right there causes a lot of, you know what I mean,
Hmm. Hmm.
harm and discord in the world. Like there's food we could literally be growing everywhere, but instead they put it in a grocery store and they make you go purchase it. This is a basic human need, you know? So, I mean, I feel like I've kind of like gone a little bit off where I was, but I just think that we just gotta agree on certain things. You know what I mean? Like in order for us to really get to that point of unconditional love, there's got to be some deal breakers that we all agree on,
Hmm.
you know. And it's like what part of hurting children do you not understand, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
what is broken in you, or you know, I don't know. It's just I just think that we got to have some deal breakers across the board when it comes to what we value, or at least on a mass scale, and we
Hmm.
all come together and agree, and so that we can, you know, really start to see unconditional love, you know, show up. There's got to be some agreements on the boundaries and the values and integrity that we all stand for. We're all human at the end of the day, and to sit up here and watch others be hurt, or allow ourselves to be hurt is totally opposite of what unconditional love is all about.
Hmm.
And that's not letting people get their way, and you know what I mean, like, you know,
Yeah.
co-signing things that are inhumane, or co-signing things that are, you know, we know are just not right, you know. So I'm gonna get off my tangent because it's,
I
yeah.
don't think it's a tangent. So I want to say that. I don't feel like
Thank
it's a
you.
tangent because this is really speaking to the greater good that I was talking about earlier, is that humanity as a whole is
Yeah.
not ready for unconditional love. You know, humanity as a whole. Yes, you're right. Why do we have to pay for a basic human necessity? Like food, water, shelter, air, like these are things that no one should have to pay for, you know? And that doesn't mean that everybody deserves a mansion. You know, you may need to work harder to get a mansion, but everybody should have a basic level of living that they are entitled to. Yes, absolutely. Um, do we know how to get there yet? No. Is it possible? I truly believe it's possible that we can have a world that's like economically able to handle that, right? Without there being any poverty or anything. Like they're just this basic level of being. That is unconditional love in my mind, you know, making sure that everyone has a basic level of humanity, of making sure their needs, their basic needs are met, that they are emotionally like cared for and taken care of, that they are physically protected. Like those are basic human necessities that humanity is not ready to give. And so as an individual, to love someone else unconditionally, it's very, it's hard when it gets to a certain point, right? Because it's easy to do in certain aspects. It's easy to love your kids unconditionally, even when they get on your nerves, even when they are draining you of every dollar that you have. You still love your kids unconditionally, but you can't do that in mass. You can't do that to everyone around you. You can't, you know what I mean? Like, these are the little humans I created. I have to take care of them. Like, you know, but even then, when they get to a certain point, you can't drain me anymore. You can't do this anymore. Like there's a boundary that has to go in place. Like, yes, you're used to getting your everything from me, but now we've moved to a point where me doing that for you is actually abuse of me, right? Because you're an adult and you should be taking care of yourself. You know, and your needs are not the same as when you were little. They were much smaller then. You know, you didn't have a car, you didn't have insurance, you didn't have all of these, you weren't out there making grown-up decisions and grown-up mistakes. Kid mistakes are easy to fix. Oh, You broke your friend's toy. Fine, I'll buy him a new toy. Whatever. You're gonna pay me back. Whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's a different situation than trying to love in mass and in the public. And yes, you can love people. It's just I keep going back to the work analogy you gave us of like when you're at work and you're having to deal with coworkers, it's like, I gotta deal with this because this job don't unconditionally love me. At the end of the day, if I stand on whatever it is that's making me feel unloved, you
You're
know,
gonna be out the
I'm
door.
gonna be out the door. And I can unconditionally love you, but at what is it unconditional love? Because at what expense is it coming? I'm
Mm,
still not able to fully express who I am and what I want to be. There's no freedom. You know, I do feel like loving others unconditionally in this physical world, it really requires us to have this really deep, strong connection to spirit, to be able to lean into that, to not care about what anybody else is saying or doing, because we know without a doubt that, we are backed by the divine. But the only way to do that is to cultivate that relationship. And while I'm working on cultivating that relationship and know that in theory, I don't know that in practice yet. I don't know that in experience yet. You know what I mean? I want to be there. I want to develop that. I intend to, all of that. And I still am not there. I have to believe that it's possible. Like, the optimist in me has to believe that that's possible, right? But I'm not there. I don't know that I'm so rooted in my connection with God that I'm unmovable. Definitely not. Definitely not. If so, I wouldn't have spent the last week basically under the covers
oh,
dealing with, my emotions around being a parent to adults, which at this point in life is sucking a lot. Okay. And I was just depressed about it. And had I been rooted in my oneness with God, my knowledge that God is providing, protecting, caring, if I was able to manifest, like, you know what I mean? Like, I probably would be able to deal with these things a lot better. And so I feel like the precursor to all of this is having that deep divine connection, which I crave, but I have not found yet.
mm.
you know, I don't know if you have anything to say in response to that, but I can move to the next question if you're ready.
I just want to say that I crave it too, and just more than ever, and I feel like the craving for me is just like having health issues that have been hard for me to overcome, and I'm just like, and I feel like honestly, I feel like when we can't like solve certain things in the human form, and we've tried different things, and sometimes it does make you lean on God, sometimes it does make you crave that connection, because you're like, there's got to be a way, there's got to be something, there's got, you know what I mean, like that that the connection with God, like if like I believe in this higher power, and I believe that, maybe solving certain things will help me in order to help other people as well. And it's like, in I feel like, what I was thinking of this week. I remember a pastor one time talking about God molding us like a potter. I know like TDJT talks of his church is like the
The
potter's
Potter's
house.
house.
And yeah, it's like God is like molding you, molding you. And in craving that connection with God, you are being molded. You know what I mean? As you're seeking his presence, his guidance, and you know what I mean? You're being molded. And so, it's just like, even though I'm hurt, even though I'm confused, even though I'm lost, I give thanks because I'm not going away from God. I'm trying to get closer to God. And so I think that's beautiful to hear you say that. And, I'm there with you on another level, like on a different issue, what I mean, a
Right,
different
right,
frequency or whatever. But I'm there with you as well, and I think that, that's what kind of like a main part of what the world is missing is, what you were talking about earlier with regard to humanity just not being ready. Enough of us aren't seeking God anymore. If anything,
right,
we've kind of been going in the opposite direction.
right, right. Yeah. Okay, now this next question. Hmm. I've heard this question talked about a lot. Um, and it's basically, how do you love the unlovable, right? How do you see God in someone who's actively abusing you? Um, and this question was actually asked at service. Reverend Victoria at Agape East, she posed the question, how do you love your torturer while you're being tortured? And, you know, the context in which she was talking about it was she was dealing with pain, and she wasn't talking about a human, but she posed that question to the congregation, and it really was like, well, that's the ultimate ability to unconditionally love somebody, is to love the person who's hurting you, who's torturing you, who's abusing you, or whatever. But what I guess I just really struggle. Thanks, Owen. You knocked my mouse down. I just struggle with, how do you actively love someone like that? And not, I'm not talking about the like delusional love. I'm talking about like true, like, how do you love someone who's hurting you actively? And is it even possible as a human to do that? Um and I'm really like, again, I guess if you're rooted in that oneness and that connection and that divine, if you're so connected, so sorry about that. That's Owen again. Uh if you're so rooted in your connection to God that maybe it's easy to, I think about Jesus on the cross, right? Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Like, that's the level of unconditional love we're supposed to have for one another. I don't know if I'm capable of it. I'm just going to be real. Like, I don't know that I can do that. Even, and it always goes back to my mom. Like, when I was living with my parents and I was actively being abused by my parents. Now, my stepdad, do I love him? Yeah, I love him, but it's not the same as loving your mom. Like, my love for my mom is unconditional, but I don't have her in my life. I've had to keep her at arm's length because she'll slip back into that same mindset of abuse very simply. Like, she's still not going to admit what happened. She's still not going to take responsibility for it. She doesn't even admit that anything was done. You know what I mean? That we're still on, I'm the one who hurt her. You know what I mean? And so, do I love her? Yes, she's not actively abusing me anymore because I'm not allowing it. And so, is that unconditional love? I don't know. Did I love her while it was going on? Yeah, I guess. But is it love, or is it like, I don't really have a choice. This is who I have. You know what I mean? So, is that unconditional love, or is it, I felt like I didn't have a choice? Right? So, I don't know. This question for me is so deep and so nuanced and so like, I don't know. I don't know if I can call the what I have for my mother unconditional love if I don't have her in my life. Or is that okay? Because what was that saying that I said? I can't remember. I know I told you. Oh, the video. There was a video I sent you and they were like, unconditional love or love doesn't mean access. I
Right.
totally believe that.
Right.
Whether or not that's unconditional love, I don't know. But love does, I love you. I don't know if I unconditionally love you because
Right.
I can love you from a distance. I don't know that I can deal with you in my life. Right. So I don't know. How do you love your torturer? I don't know. I'm gonna pass it to you because I'll be honest. I got more questions than I got answers.
Listen, I'm right there with you. I agree. I think that you can love people unconditionally and not have them in your life. There's many people who I see the humanity in them. I see somehow, some way, I see the child in them, the child that was hurt, and that is now in this adult body, that is now hurting themselves and maybe not just hurting me, but hurting people around them. So
Hmm.
what I realized is that a lot of times, we have people who, we think that they're just hurting us, but they're not. First of all, they're hurting themselves, and then we're not the only ones that they are. If this is the frequency that they are on. This is where their mind is. So anyone who comes into contact with them is going to experience what or something similar to what you have experienced. Maybe not to that degree, depending on the scenario, the situation, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But to some degree. And we have to remember that, there is a thing called Stockholm syndrome. Like you said, like, yeah, like, so we love our abusers because they're kind of all we have. You know what I mean? There's been a few people who I feel have abused me in my life that I've loved them because they were all I've had, from bosses to my parental figures,
Hmm.
and so on and so forth, even family members and things like that, where they are actively abusing me, but it's like I don't really have nobody else. This is really all I know. This is, you know what I mean? And so I'm tolerating it, like I said earlier, to either keep them in my life, or because I think I have no other option, or because I want to see the good in them. I see the good in them. I don't just see the bad things that they do. I see how they can be caring. I see how they can share when they want to. I see how they can be understanding when they want to. But I see that flip side as well,
Hmm.
And guess what? While I appreciate the good, I can't ignore the part that is like really hurting me, that's depressing me, that's making me feel low, that's bringing me down to their level. And I do think that we can see God in people, because like I said, I'm sure your mom wasn't all bad. You know what I mean? I'm sure you have good memories and good things. There may be certain things that you say or do that may remind you of her. You know what I mean? And that's the God in her. That's the
Hmm.
God coming through, the good parts that shine through. But unfortunately, even though we have good parts that shine through us, some of us have been hijacked by these negative entities and spirits, and they are causing us to, again, not only harm others, but harm ourselves. And so, when I think of, and I don't know, like at one point I thought it was like my toxic positivity. Like I would just see the good in people.
Hmm.
Even though you're hurting me and you're saying rude things, I would just see the good in you. You know what I mean? But I had to stop ignoring that, because it was even though I was able to appreciate the good, again, I was being hurt. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? There would be little, and I'm flinching, and I'm like, you know what I mean, on the
Right.
inside. I may not show it on the outside, but on the inside, I'm like, well, damn,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah.
So I think that like you said, number one, we pray for them. I think that prayer changes things. You are a powerful prayer warrior, and I strive to pray more and to really get in that vein of praying more, because I think that prayer changes things. When we pray, we see, there's movement in our lives. And it doesn't necessarily, we may not see the change in the person because they have their free will, but God will give us more understanding, more discernment, more, you know what I mean, really
Hmm.
guidance so that we can, see what we don't see, and again, the thing to remember is that what people don't understand is that a lot of this stuff is it's spiritual warfare. You know what I mean? A lot of people have these negative entities that have attached themselves. Now we are been taught to think that demons are out there. There's these spirits that we can't see. No, demons attach themselves to us if we do not have the proper protection, and it starts as a child. You know what I mean? It starts at a child, as a child, little eight. Lord have mercy. It starts when we're children. You know what I mean? Where we need to
Hmm.
be protected, and we need to be, made sure that we are kept whole. And you know what I mean? Because if not, it just continues to grow as we get older. So, I think that loving from a distance is okay. And I think that loving our torturer is something that we have to understand, that we don't have to be tortured, especially at this point. You know what I mean? Like as a child,
Hmm.
sometimes you don't have any options, when you get to be an adult, thank goodness we have so much free will. There's so many resources out here. There's so much movement that we can make, so many things that we can do to get away from our torturers if we so choose.
Right.
So yeah, that's just what I have to say on that.
Okay. Yeah, you said if we so choose, if we even know we have a choice, right? Because we
That's
do.
sometimes we don't
We
know. I
know.
didn't know I had a choice for a long time. Again, with old work environments. Like I don't have a choice. Where else I'm gonna go? Go over there and it's gonna be the same thing. Go to a new company and it's the same
Right.
thing. You know
Right.
what I mean? I don't have a
Yeah.
choice. I just gotta deal with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I I didn't realize, but yes, I had a choice. I
Right.
chose that, in
Yeah.
any environment, even my personal relationships. I
Hmm.
chose that. Taking responsibility is very key too. A lot of times we just don't take responsibility again because it started when we were younger. And so this is what we have grown to become accustomed to. We don't know that we have a choice. We don't know that we can respond differently now. We don't have to stay stuck in these same
Right.
cycles.
Right. Yeah. And again, that goes back to unconditional love is rooted in self-love. We have
Right.
to start with loving ourselves. You can't love someone else if you don't love yourself. It's just not possible. And it might mean unlearning some things you learned in childhood. What I was thinking when you were saying we need to be protected as children is oftentimes the people who are responsible for protecting us are the ones we need protection from,
That
you
right
know?
there.
And so
And can I
go ahead.
just say really quick? And that's why villages and community is important.
And that's why this world is not ready for it.
Right. Because we got neighbors instead of a village,
Right.
instead of a community. You have neighbors. They're not a part of
Yeah.
your community just because they live next door to you. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know. As somebody who's been blessed with amazing neighbors, I've had amazing neighbors. I really have.
That's a
Um,
blessing.
so but I noticed the difference. Like if I'm out somewhere and my son's gonna come home and get off the bus. I mean, we're homeschooling him now, but we weren't always. I know that I can just say, "Hey, neighbor, can you grab my kid when you grab yours?" You know what I mean? Do
Right.
you? I'll be home in 20 minutes or whatever, but I'm not gonna make it for the bus. And to know that you have that backup, you know what I mean? It's such a relief,
Hmm.
to just have that. And again, that's a part of we are not really ready as a humanity, as a species, as a world to love each other that way. And I pray and I believe that humanity is headed in that direction, whether it be 50 years, 100 years, or 1,000 years from now. I don't know. I don't know, but I do feel like that. At some point, I feel that we can make it there. I just don't see it in my lifetime. I don't see that happening in my lifetime. We are at
My
the
heart is
end.
broken.
Oh, well, we're gonna have to come back and another lifetime
Right.
and see it in the future, right? Um, I do have a couple more questions left. I think we might save those for next week because we're already at the end of this hour. So I don't want to start a whole new conversation because I know some of these are really deep questions. Particularly the anger one, which I think we're probably going to have a whole conversation next week about anger and unconditional love next week. And the role of anger and what its purpose is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think another big one is talking about how defending people who are doing harmful acts to others is not love at all. And
Right.
there's a big misconception around that. So yeah, I would love to come back next week and really finish the questions that we have here and, really converse about these things.
Yeah. Definitely. All right. So I guess we're going to wrap it up here. We're at the end of the hour. We so appreciate every last one of you. We are really looking forward to, getting in the comments and talking to you all. So, hopefully by this point, we've had a great conversation in the comments as well as, right here, right now on the video. But yeah, meet us in the comments. We're looking forward to kind of developing a closer relationship with our viewership, and let's see how this expands. Comments, let us know what you think of this new format and how we're doing this. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. We appreciate you. Uni, any final words as we get ready to wrap up?
Yes, I just want to thank you all for joining us. And yeah, I hope you all appreciate the new format, us being in the comments, able to chat with you and share and things of that nature. I think it's going to be really good. And I just want to remind people to just start to have unconditional love on your mind. Like when you start to at least just ponder what it means to you, how is it showing up in your life now? Maybe how would you like to expand, and how would you like to see it show up in the world? Just start to think about it. You know what I mean? Just having the thought in your mind can really start to open pathways for you to be able to expand, and it'll really help us all. One of the things that we're doing here is, we're sharing because we really want to get these ideas and these thoughts and, just these concepts out into the world so that maybe, just maybe, we can see a little bit more of this in our lifetime,
Right, right, right.
just a
Yeah,
little bit,
right,
right? So
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so just think about it and try to practice unconditional love, journal about it, pray on it, ask spirit to show you, how can you show up in unconditional love? You know what I mean? Maybe do a Google search. What is unconditional love? And see if it is showing up in your life, and how can you kind of make some adjustments so that it can be your ideal. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you all so much for joining us.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that, Uni. Oh, I just wanted to say blessings to all of you. We love you. We appreciate you. Everything that Uni said, take it to heart, practice it. We are not fully healed gurus standing in front of you. We're working through this stuff with you. So there's no shame in where you are right now. Okay. I'm trying to be honest about where I am right now.
Same.
But yeah, we love you all. We will see you next week and we will see you in the comments. Peace.
Peace.